Hello, I'm Philip Oliver, founding partner of Eureka Europe. In a moment, we'll explore the fear factors around innovation with you, and then we'll give you some insights and food for thought, introducing a total systems approach to innovation called innovation engineering. And at the end of the session, we'll give you a one-page summary of our top 12 tips for driving out innovation risk. Now, let me introduce you to our presenter for today, Helen Potter. Helen trained as a color chemist and marketer, and since 2005 has been involved in shaping and evolving this thing called innovation engineering. She is in fact the most experienced innovation engineering practitioner this side of the Atlantic, with some 25 years in new product development and innovation. She has both taught and successfully managed and run significant innovation projects herself. I'm pleased to say she's also my other business partner and co-founder of Eureka Europe. So, colleagues, it's my pleasure to hand over to Helen for what I know will be an engaging and insightful next 25 minutes.
So a huge amount of issues coming through in relation to what frightens you or what frightens your organization about innovation. Thank you so much for all that raw material. You know, it's clear that there are some key kind of umbrella themes around the fear factor. And I wonder if this iceberg model may help to put those into context. So if you consider that 9/10 of the issues are hidden below the surface and are our innovation challenges that you've just been speaking to eloquently, then above the surface, we've got our business challenges, be they related to growth, sustainability, developing new products and services, improving our performance, cost savings, new business model, or any of the issues around upskilling and training and labour issues. I'm sure you're all working to some degree in one of those areas, and you need to innovate. And the problem is, as it says on the surface there, innovation feels like a random gamble. It feels so risky and unpredictable and difficult to do. And yet, if we don't innovate, how are we ever going to hit these targets? So we've tried to articulate here the key issues that people relate to us most frequently, and as you have done today. So is it that you're getting a poor return on an innovation effort? A big failure has maybe stopped you in your tracks. Maybe you don't have a pipeline of ideas, you're stuck for what to do next. Or is it that your projects just don't make it off the runway? They're always stuck at that front end at ideation and don't get any further. Perhaps you're struggling to persuade the business to do more because you can't prove the value of innovation value. You don't know how to measure it. And many of the issues that you spoke to in chat really spoke to a lack of alignment across the business, preventing innovation happening effectively. Maybe you don't have the tools and the best practices. Fear of failure, another theme that was very much in the chat. No structured end-to-end process, stops innovation happening, too many handoffs, too many silos. Well, the bottom line is basically no one taught us how to innovate, right? You didn't learn it at school, even those of you with an MBA. I bet you didn't get a step-by-step, this is how you innovate successfully kind of coaching. No one's ever taught us. So how can we expect to be successful? And perhaps hidden even further below the surface, a rather sinister belief seems to have taken hold, or at least perhaps with 44% of us out there. Phil ran a poll on LinkedIn recently asking, do you think of innovation as a skill that can be learned? And as you can see there, you group together those that had issues with that notion and we get to 44%. So doesn't that feed the fear? If you don't even believe that you can learn how to innovate, how can you possibly have any belief that you can put an operating system in, that you can reduce risk, that you can enable a team to go and innovate reliably or successfully? Well, there's good news. You can. Innovation success is not random. Using the proven innovation engineering system, you can transform innovation from a random gamble into a reliable system for repeated success. And today, I'm going to try and bring that alive for you. Well, I'm going to go through some steps here and some points that will build to 12 top tips. And as Phil said, we'll deliver that handout of 12 top tips at the end. But first, I want to tell you and explain something about innovation engineering. What is it? Well, it's the world's only fully documented, proven total system for reliable innovation. Fully documented, it's written down, it's a step-by-step guide. It's proven, it's grounded in data. And it's a total system all the way through, from strategy, what we're going to do and why, to delivery, and all the interconnecting parts. That's what innovation engineering is. So it's a complete operating system for how to go about innovation, and it's also a recognised academic discipline. So you can learn it on campus in the US, or you can come along to a workshop or gain an accredited training certificate in innovation engineering from ourselves. Now, when I first came across innovation engineering, I was really struck by its pedigree. It's not something that's been invented as a result of looking at something that Google or Amazon have done. Its pedigree reaches back into the past. The man on the left is Doug Hall, founder of innovation engineering. He started his career at Procter & Gamble. He was a very successful inventor. He went on from there to become something of an ideas guru. He understands how to have more and better ideas. He's a creative person. He went on to have a TV career. He did some series with Simon Cowell, something called Backyard Inventor. He became known as a creative specialist. However, he became disillusioned with enabling people to have more and better ideas. What's the point of having an idea if you don't see that idea make impact? So after a period of reflection, he dug deep into his life's experience. Now, Doug's father, Brad Hall, worked in the paper industry and had the privilege of working with Dr. W. Edwards Deming, the man on the right. Now, Deming's largely considered the father of what we call systems thinking. So if you've ever worked with something called Lean and Six Sigma or total quality management, Deming has touched your life. It's his systems thinking that led to these disciplines, which transformed manufacturing through in the West in the 1980s. It helped rebuild Japan's post-World War II economy as well. And what Doug Hall has done, familiar with the power of systems thinking and how it transformed manufacturing, is apply Deming's work to strategy and innovation and how we work together. A very sound philosophy to make what appears unmeasurable measurable, to make the unknown known in the realms of strategy, innovation, and how we work together. So this is systems thinking applied to innovation. And as Deming said, it starts with leadership, but everyone has a role to play. Now, to paraphrase Deming, 94% of the time, a failure is due to the system or lack of a reliable system. And only 6% of the time is it due to the worker, somebody's fault or some kind of random event that you wouldn't take account of in a system. 94% of the time, it's the system. So if you feel you're innovating unsuccessfully, you probably don't have a system for it. You probably simply don't know how to go about it. Some people find it difficult to wrap their head around, well, what are you talking about? What is a system anyway? So the analogy I like to use is, picture yourself in a coffee bar, maybe a Costa or a Starbucks. It's really busy. There's a team of baristas behind the counter. Someone's taking your order. What's your name? What you're having? It's being passed on to somebody else. By the time you get to the end of the counter, your coffee's waiting for you. That system is rocking. They're loving it. The team's really enjoying it. They're working well together. Everybody knows their role in bringing your order to bear. Maybe another week you go in there and the whole thing's fallen apart. Everybody who's in a car in the drive-through is being looked after. You've got a half-hour wait. What's gone wrong? It's the system failure, most probably. Even if you've got a new person join the team, if they don't know what to do and the system's failing because of them, that's not their fault. That's a failure of the training system. 94% of the time, the system is the key to success. So therefore, having an innovation system, understanding all the components that create a successful innovation, all those things that drive risk out and working with them is a key to success. Understanding innovation as a total system and how the elements work together. So cutting straight to the chase, here's a simplified version of our innovation engineering system on a page. And some of you will have seen this before, but we stripped it back because what I want to do as I go through it is really speak to how each tool and each element of the innovation engineering system helps tilt the odds of success in your favor, helps drive risk out. So it starts with strategy. The number one cause of innovation failure is a lack of alignment, what we should be innovating on and why. You know, if you work in the creative industry, you know, if you get a poor brief from a client, you'll not deliver good work. That's the principle at play here. But more than that, the leadership team needs to align on what the most important mission is for innovation. This blue card that you see on the screen here is our tool for linking the business plan, how you're going to achieve your growth, with the innovation effort. And without the leadership team being clearly aligned, and without the leadership team clearly articulating that, you're far less likely to be successful. So we need alignment at the top and a clear articulation of what we should be innovating on and why. I think it's clear why that would help you be successful. But there's a really significant point in this system at the start, which we call strategy activation. And that's, it forces a leader to figure out what we need to stop doing to create the capacity to innovate. We've heard in the chat that the key barrier is finding the time to innovate, and yet innovation is essential. So we have to find a way with our strategic intent to create the capacity. That's not easy. It's a difficult decision to decide what you stop doing, but there has to be strategic rigor there. Figure out what the most important mission is to achieve the business plan, create capacity, give people the tools, the system and the framework to go and do it. So moving on, idea generation. Now, the key element here is to have many ideas, a high quantity of ideas. Quantity will breed quality. You can't afford to have one idea and fall in love with it so much that you can't be rational about it further down the line. There can be any number of ideas that can meet this mission. We should all be passionate about this mission. This is the thing that's going to make the difference. But there could be any number of ways to address that mission. We need to be objective about the number of about those ideas. So through the idea engineering process, we need to generate many ideas aligned with the blue card so that we've got a rich pipeline to draw on. But that pipeline's no use to us if those ideas are not articulated clearly. So the yellow card tool that you see on the screen here is a system for enabling anyone to communicate an idea so that it's impossible to misunderstand. Because if you're having a breakthrough idea, I can only navigate that by what I already know, but you've got this thing in your head, there's images, it's words, it's brilliant, it's a breakthrough, you know what you mean. I don't, I only know what I know. There's a natural barrier there. So the communication of an idea is key. Training in this area doesn't take long, and it's a great skill to get down so that you can capture the innate creativity of everybody that you're working with. Capture an idea so it's impossible to misunderstand. Write clearly, not to dumb down your idea, or to get over the genius of it in simple terms so we can assimilate it quickly. You don't want a flip chart with a few words on it, a thought starter, you want a fully formed idea, okay? More than that, you need to figure out the value of this idea. So here we teach techniques like Fermi estimating so that you can forecast in the absence of data. How much of this cost-saving idea might this achieve? What revenue might we get? What profit might we get? What might it cost to make? All too often innovations get put on the difficult to do pile because we can't quantify them. So we need to give people some techniques to estimate in a way that forces them to think through their idea and put some kind of scale to it. At this early stage, it's going to be wrong, but it's going to be useful. And we also identify the critical risks, or death threats as we call them. What's the biggest thing that's likely to kill this project? What's the biggest risk that might kill this project? Confront reality and start there. So with this technique of clearly defining an idea, we can move very quickly into what we would call our discovery process, where we go through rapid cycles of learning to eliminate the death threats in order of magnitude. All too often people get distracted by technical feasibility and excited by an idea. They haven't even checked in whether the customer's even interested, be that an internal customer or an external customer. So the trick is fast cycles of learning to build momentum into your innovation project. If you're a project manager that's used to having a budget, a set of resources, a timeline, a critical path, this is hard. Moving from project management to innovation management, there's a critical difference because the number of unknowns is far higher. You have to go fast, you have to go with momentum, and you have to not waste money in order to prove an innovation idea has the potential for success. So a great deal of creativity required in how you prototype and how you experiment and how you go at it fast and cheap. And with a front end in your innovation system like that, you'll radically increase your odds of success, because all of the tools within that front end are geared to driving down risk, so that at the point you want to move into development, you can present a go, no-go business case to whoever it is that's going to fund it, whether it's outside investors or an internal organization. And you've got a very strong case. You've got a project that's aligned with a mission, that's been costed and de-risked. When you go through development, you need to consider whether this is a real breakthrough, and in which case your systems need to focus on risk management. And if your project sits closer to your core competencies, it'll follow a different route and the system will be geared to efficiency. But the point is, you have an agile system that drives out risk and increases value all the way. So we talk about core innovations that help us stay relevant and leap innovations that create our future. The database behind innovation engineering shows about 50% of future profit will come from leap innovations, but they necessarily need to follow two different paths through your business. Oftentimes, companies have grown a fairly robust development system for the core innovations, but haven't got anything for the leap. And of course, fear is bigger, isn't it? If you're doing something you've not been done before, how do you mitigate that fear? Well, you do that by having a system, and a system in which everybody has been trained, everybody understands their role, and everybody participates. You have as few handoffs as possible, because with every handoff, there's an opportunity for variability. When an idea is first defined, risk is at its highest, but as we go through these two systems of define and discovery, we're driving risk down to the point where we're ready for investment. As this system works, you'll see 30 to 80% less risk versus a system without this front end, and 72% more value. Well, for the numbers people out there, quite happy to take questions on where those come from. But in essence, it's the fact that we're using data to drive our decision making. So we're so good at creating a concept straight out the back of idea generation that we can instantly go to market, get data and improve it. 72% more value comes from the fact that people are problem solving all the way through discovery and development rather than compromising. So we're stopping that gravitational pull that tends to happen in larger organizations where everything comes back to what we know how to make. We actually understand why we're innovating in this space, and we're adding value through meaningful problem solving. And just to mention the opportunity that we're all enjoying at the moment, if you like, fellow innovators, now's the time for your mindset. This data was put together by the Innovation Engineering Institute in 2011 at the behest of the US Department of Commerce. And it shows the difference between those people who had an innovation strategy and used innovation engineering to deploy that strategy versus the non-innovators. The impact of coming out of the 2008 financial crisis. So you can see what a massive difference. I mean, sales growth, 4% versus 84%, profit growth, 13% versus 96%. The mover advantage, if you can find the capacity to innovate right now, is huge. So that's kind of the end of my first part. We've got 12 top tips, and what I've done here is try to kind of distill down everything I've just said to give you the first 6 top tips for reducing the riskiness of innovation and trying new things. Starting with a clear mission, what you need to be innovating on and why. Alignment through the business on that mission, making sure that you have a high volume of ideas so that that innovation pump is primed and you don't get too wedded to any one idea. Be impossible to misunderstand, communicate with clarity. Do the maths, no project. If you can't understand and rank your ideas in terms of their potential value, you lose track of prioritization. Fail fast, fail cheap. Doug Hall, my mentor, he was the first to coin that phrase. We don't embrace failure as part of the process. We fail to do effective experimentation and we fail to move forward fast. It's failing within a safe environment that avoids the embarrassing moment in front of your colleagues at a later time with a dramatic failure. And you need to design your development path according to the level of risk. Run efficiently if it's a core innovation, manage risk if it's a leap innovation. So the next part of this presentation is looking at, kind of speaks specifically to fail fast, fail cheap, and being impossible to misunderstand. I suppose what I'd like to say here is, I think, you see all of that, you see the innovation system and you think, gosh, that is so far away from the way I'm working. Where do I start? And when I was working in industry, that system didn't exist where I worked, but I was immediately able to have an impact, immediately able to drive down risk, immediately able to be more successful with my innovation via the technique that I'm about to show you now. One definition and one tool made the world of difference to me. And it was the starting point that enabled myself and my team to embed a more systematic way of going about innovation. So my question is, what if you could quantify the odds of success of any of your ideas? What if you could understand how likely they were to be, how likely they are to be successful? And in so doing, understand how to communicate them even better. Which brings me on to my favorite part, because you will start to reduce risk right away if you start to think of your ideas, your innovations as something that's meaningfully unique. And meaningfully unique, it's like the TARDIS for Doctor Who fans. Any Doctor Who fans out there? It's bigger on the inside. When you dig beneath the surface, there's a lot more to it than meets the eye. Meaningfully unique. It's the most powerful definition of an innovation. You'll all have heard of a USP, a unique selling point. There's absolutely no point being unique if nobody cares about what the unique thing is that you've made. I don't care if you've patented, well done. But if you can't commercialize it, if this idea doesn't have any impact, what was the point? It needs to be meaningful. And if it's meaningful, it's probably solving a significant problem or filling a gap. If it's something you can buy, people are more likely to buy it, more likely to pay more for it, if it's meaningful. And this definition applies whether you're inventing a new product, a new service, a new business model, working on your internal processes and systems. Meaningfully unique. If you all align behind this and think, yeah, that's my destination, you'll start to be more successful. No one else is doing it, of course. We all know what unique means. And I'm inviting you to think of a scale here of meaningful uniqueness as well, as you'll see. Now, when it comes to tilting the odds of success in your favor, reducing risk, it's not good enough to just be meaningful to the end user. I'm sure that makes sense to you. Clearly, you're not going to sell it or put it into practice unless it's meaningful to them. But it also needs to be meaningful to you. You look at all the inventions out there, common denominator, the passion of the inventor. You've got to love it. Now, I know that I've contradicted myself here because I said you can't fall in love with any one idea such that you can't be objective. Yes, that's true. But you've got to love that mission. That blue card mission, that strategy, what you're going to do, what you're going to achieve is your touchstone. You've got to love it. And those ideas that align with that, you need to have a passion for seeing them through, even if you have to kill them in the end and move on to the next. You have to love it. And if you're working in an organization, well, if it's completely irrelevant to them and they have no interest, then it's not going to get anywhere. So meaningful is a very powerful element of an innovation, meaningful to you, your customer, your organization. Meaningfully unique also has great value because it can be measured. I mentioned earlier, what if you could measure the success, understand the probability of success of any given idea? Well, you can. One of the great bodies of work that sits behind this Actually came from Doug's first company. Doug Hall set up a company called Accupol, and the data from that company is the data on which the innovation engineering system is based, and put in place the systems to enable us to continually improve it. So we know meaningfully unique can be measured and correlated with your chance of success, because these are two dimensions. If you go out to your customers or internal customers and say, on a scale of 0 to 10, how new and different do you perceive this idea to be? And on a scale of 0 to 10, how much do you like it? You can get a measure for how meaningfully unique it's perceived to be. Work with us and we'll show you to come up with one data point, a weighted average that you can correlate with the chance of success. You can also understand the odds of word of mouth diffusion. And this for me was the game changer. You can do this so fast and so cheap. Once your team can articulate ideas and create basic concepts straight out of an idea generation session, you can get feedback on them overnight, rank your ideas, and you're off. No loss of momentum, data's driving your decision making, and you're on course for success. You might get results in the middle here, not very new and different, not particularly liked, same old stuff, but you've got a baseline. You can then think about how you're going to improve it. Did I fail to communicate it? Have I not connected with the customer? Did I ask the right people? Do I need another iteration? You've got data, you're off and running. You're de-risking your process. So that's where it started for me, understanding how to back winners and developing the system from that very point. So as we get closer to the end here of the core content, I have another thing to say about meaningfully unique. I want to share with you a secret to inventing and problem solving. And this represents the way we think throughout the whole system, whether we're trying to come up with a blue card, lots of great ideas, or problem solving our way all the way through to delivery. We need to be creative on demand. We can't wait for a guru to pop in and give us pearls of wisdom. We need to be able to turn on smart problem solving. And there's a way of doing that. We know we're looking for meaningfully unique. Where do they come from? Where does meaningfully unique come from? How can we have more and better ideas? Well, we need more stimulus. So that's anything that you can feed your brain, food for thought, use to have more ideas. In simple terms, trying to think of something original to have for dinner, start with a blank sheet of paper or watch a cookery show or go online. It's stimulus, things to work with. And joyously, if we collaborate with others and leverage diversity of thinking, there's an exponential impact. You want to solve problems, you need to read around the subject, bring in great stimulus from a broad range of sources, have a system for that, and work with others with a different thinking style. You will have loads of ideas. It's fantastic. It works. However, there's a bad guy, and that's why we're all here today. Because the greater the fear, the more likely that creative process is to shut down. And you've seen it, haven't you? You've seen it. Lots of people sat around an empty flip chart in a room devoid of stimulus, being asked to have ideas, to brainstorm. Worst case scenario, you're fearful, speaking out in case you get landed with something to do. Horrible. And then, of course, on a macro scale, what's just happened to us in the world? How are you feeling right now? As we suggest, fear's just got huge. There's global unrest. There's talk of a recession. We have just been through hell and back dealing with the consequences of a global pandemic. Even the most optimistic amongst us, seeing all of the opportunities, have to recognize the level of fear out there and confront it as a reality and develop systems to deal with it. We're humans. It's a natural and psychological response. You've got to be able to make the unknown known, control what you can, experiment where you can, and figure your way out of it. And really, with that level of fear and the backdrop that we're working with, it places a spotlight on collaboration. Remember that exponential impact. We're much more likely to be successful if we leverage diversity of thinking. And whether you're thinking now about the climate emergency or your own personal issues, I suggest that collaboration offers a way forward. So finally, I want to leave you with a thought for the day around culture. And that's, again, thinking about this relationship, this way of thinking about meaningfully unique, about thinking about innovation, speaks to culture as well. Because gathering stimulus requires a culture of learning. We're bringing in information to inform our innovation process. We don't know it all. We need stuff from outside. If you're going to leverage diversity, you require a culture of collaboration across your organization and with external parties as well. To drive out fear, to make the unknown known, we need a culture of experimentation. So these elements come together to create a culture of innovation. And yeah, you don't get there overnight. But what we've learned in being out there teaching people is amazing things happen when you give people tools and techniques and a practical ability to go do it. They may start off not working where there's a culture of innovation, but it can grow from that knowledge and that savvy. The culture can move in the right direction. It gets there faster if the leadership have the right attitude, you know, because if you embrace learning as part of the process, you're prepared to say, I don't know. If you embrace collaboration as part of the process, you're prepared to say, I need help. You know, you'll work with others. And if you embrace failure as part of the process, you can say, I fail a lot. Now, those leaders that can get out of the way, they can put their ego aside and say, I don't know, I need help, I fail a lot. Have the leadership style that benefits innovation, that enables innovation. They have to let it go. That, you know, if you're going to enable innovation in your business, there needs to be a framework, it needs to be led, and people need to know how to participate in that system. It's collaborative. So as we're heading towards questions now, here is the part 2 of the 6 top tips for reducing risk. Aim for meaningfully unique and measure it. Understand these 3 levers: stimulus, diversity, and driving out fear. Figure out how you're going to collaborate. Figure out how you're going to enable that. Stay curious, stay open-minded. For me, stimulus is kind of proxy for a growth mindset. Get stuff in, stimulate the brain. And confront fear. Face the fear head on. Have systems that enable people to experiment, confront, and make the unknown known. And use data to drive decision making, because without the numbers, you can't drive down risk in a quantified fashion. Know where you are at any one time. And essentially what we're talking about here is adopting a total system approach to innovating, recognizing that that's what's required for success. So we're just at the point where I want to take questions. So really, I'm not going to go through these slides in any detail. I've given you a list, haven't I? You're about to receive 12 top tips for reducing innovation risk. Really, this slide paints a picture of what it feels like when you're working within an organization that has a strong innovation culture. All these things have been mentioned. Maybe come back to this when we're working on the questions. And this may well be of interest to you. If you're feeling a bit lost in your organization, what chance have I got? Our advice is to work with the willing, because all new ideas, new technology tends to follow this take-up curve, this bell-shaped curve. Don't think about all the laggards that are never going to love innovation. Work with the willing, find the volunteers that are going to jump in and get the innovation movement started. I'm quite happy to talk about that a bit more. So finally, I've given you 12 top tips, but if you said to me, so what's the number one? What's the one thing that reduces risk? Well, it's this combination of, education, giving you the knowledge, tools and skills plugged into the right framework that de-risks innovation. Everybody understanding their role in an operating system and participating in it. Because, as I said at the start, 94% of the failures are due to the system. Thank you. Over to you, Phil.
Well, it's actually me that's going to pick it up now, Helen. We've got some questions come in. Thanks very much for that. So I think we're going to go on and give people a chance to put their hands up and ask questions directly. But just to let everyone know, if we don't get to your question, we will provide you with an answer after the webinar. So I've got a question from Christo that comes in, and he says, applying Deming to the failure of leadership would suggest that the leadership system itself is what is broken rather than the actual people operating inside it.
Yes, I agree.
Brilliant. So just put your hand up if you've got a question that you want to ask, but we have another one from Bob. Prior to ideation, wouldn't it be prudent to have a well-defined problem to generate thoughts about first?
Absolutely. I glossed over the stage really before idea generation. So step one, you've got your mission, we need ideas for. Before you go into idea generation, there's a raft of work to do. The moment when you come together to have ideas is really the finale of that create system. And obviously you need to bring stimulus into that session that will deliver the best possible output. And a well-formed problem is key. So a deep understanding of potential problems is required. And oftentimes if you go in there and people have a preconceived idea of what that problem is, it delivers a poor result out of idea generation. So a really strong technique that we advocate is to run a problem survey. So first off, you hypothesize, write down problem statements that you think might be relevant in this area, and then go survey them. On a scale of 0 to 10, how big a problem do you perceive this to be? On a scale of 0 to 10, how frequent a problem is this? Because you want to be hitting big and frequent problems ideally if you're going to deliver success later down the line. So a problem survey is an ideal way to start de-risking before you've even begun idea generation. If you're aiming for meaningfully unique, you've got to fix a meaningful problem. Great question, thank you.
Thanks, Helen. And we've got one here from Ines, if there are no hands up. This is a really interesting one. How are you measuring risk? Mitigation costs versus cost of no mitigation, question mark, or cost of reducing probability to as low as reasonably practical? I think, Ines, if I haven't got that right, you jump in and tell me if the question's not quite right.
No, you were spot on. Thanks.
Well, that's really tricky to answer succinctly. So I'm going to focus on the innovation engineering system and explain where our data has come from in essence. And it's a consequence of measuring what happens in what we would call a suboptimal system without the kind of front end that I've just described to you, where there's define and discover. So what's the rate of success without that? And if you then plug in define and discover, what's the rate of success after that? So that's the risk mitigation data that we're talking about, having data in and being able to measure concept improvement. So it's not about the sort of opportunity lost or the implications of not innovating, if you like. It's just comparing a strong system with a suboptimal system.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah, I mean, when you talk about risk, it takes on so many guises, covers so many areas. But thank you for that response, Helen, and Dougie, obviously.
Thanks, Ines.
It's never obvious. Thanks very much, Ines. I've got another question here from Bob. Do you map solving a problem versus new and different to screen top ideas?
Solving a problem versus new and different to screen new ideas. We measure meaningfully unique in order to screen new ideas. So that's down to the respondent's perception, and the two elements of that is how meaningful it is, so the extent to which it solves a meaningful problem, and how new and different. So these are two elements, and to come up with one measure for potential for success, we create a weighted average. And as a result of the database, we know that propensity to buy, or how much they like it, or how well the problem solved, is slightly more important than how new and different it is. So we create a weighted average according to that data in order to come up with one figure for how meaningfully unique an idea is perceived to be. And you can think of that as being concept persuasion, how persuaded people are to buy something.
Thanks, Helen. We've got another question from Christo here. I think there is a big TARDIS around culture of experimentation. I'm loving the idea of using a TARDIS. By the way, for those of you who are not Doctor Who geeks, that's time and relative dimension in space, to represent bigger on the inside. Can you say more about how to recognize, reward, and encourage failure behaviors?
Yeah, big topic. When I first started talking about innovation engineering in the corporate world, and I spoke about the need to do this and used the F word, the fail word, so ingrained was the get it right first time culture, and we need to be successful, that it was brushed aside as nonsense. You know, you're on a journey when you first start talking about failure as part of the process, but somehow you need to create the room for a learning lab, if you like. And I'm not talking about a room with people with white coats, somewhere where you can test ideas. It doesn't cost a huge amount of money and has a good churn rate, does a lot of really interesting stuff. Because if the stakeholders can see that failing there, i.e. running experiments and understanding consequences, stops the potential for failure in the marketplace, then experimentation has to naturally become part of the process. This shouldn't be difficult, you know, we're talking about the scientific method. You, as an organization, you're being asked to do something that's never been done before. Well, how can you possibly just fall in love with an idea, place all your money on it and throw it out to market? No logic, it's absolute folly. And the act of persuasion comes from getting your head down and I think doing good work, demonstrating how experimentation leads to success. And sometimes you need an external partner to help with that. Sometimes it feels the stakes are too high to do it by yourself. I certainly couldn't have done it without the innovation engineering community outside of my organization. But there's a lot now out there talking about what is best practice and the need to give people freedom within a framework to deliver on a clear mission. That was a bit rambly. I hope that, that helped.
Okay. We've got a brilliant ask here from Marina. And I don't think we can answer it today, Marina, but it's a great stimulus for a future webinar. Would be great to have some practical examples of implementation of key tips. Innovation, when applied in the particular organization, usually imply particular instruments. For example, internal innovation accelerators, research and development processes, etc. So we'll follow up on that and we'll come back to you, Marina. Great ask, thank you. Joanne, we've got a question here. How similar is this to agile tech startup principles and techniques, growth mindsets, and using data science? I don't know whether you want to elaborate on that, Joanne, at all. That'll be a no then.
So again, a good question, because innovation engineering is an assemblage of good stuff, if you like. Yes, there's some proprietary stuff in there that's really powerful. You know, I've spoken about meaningfully unique and the database that sits behind that. But agile project management, the kind of stuff that you'll have read around tech startup, you would recognize that within the innovation engineering systems, just plugged in the right place and joined up with everything else. If there are any design thinkers out there that love design thinking, you would recognize that in the way that we interact with consumers and the way that we hone the offer. What is here is a total system that joins all these techniques together. So, yeah. De Bono, anyone heard of De Bono? If you're a creative thinker, you'll see a lot of that in idea engineering as well.
So Phil's asked a similar ask to Marina earlier on. So Phil, we'll come back to you on that, if that's okay. We've got just time for another couple of questions. We've got one from Paul. Helen, sorry if I missed this, but you mentioned there was one particular thing that really impacted on you and changed your perceptions. What was that first one thing? Don't think it was meeting you, Paul, by the way.
Innovation is something that's meaningfully unique. You know, even now, walking into an organization for the first time, there's a lot of navel gazing goes on in the boardroom. What does innovation mean for us? How shall we define innovation? You know, the practical application of creativity. That's what we're going to do. And get out of the way, align behind meaningfully unique, and good stuff will happen. If we all understand that something has to be as unique as possible and as meaningful as possible to have an impact, then good stuff happens. And for me, that really caught my imagination. That and the fact that there's a science behind creativity. So I'm a chemist. Didn't see myself as a creative, somehow blagged my way onto a global marketing team, and I was responsible for innovation. I was feeling the pressure. And then somebody showed me a system for having more and better ideas. Oh, the joy. So, you know, I managed to get myself a reputation for being a creative, whatever that means, but I was just using a reliable system to have more and better ideas with the people around me. So these two things together, I think that sense of belief that I could do this, that I could learn it, that I could help others learn it, and that the destination was meaningfully unique, definitely for me was the game changer.
Yep. Sorry, Paul. I actually, Helen could have said there it was, and that would have really shut me up, Paul. So we did learn a lot from you. Thank you. And finally, David, you talk of a measure of meaningfully unique purchase intention, no one else doing it. Can you expand and identify if there is a go, no-go point?
Certainly. So when we go out to the market and measure meaningfully unique, the survey will be designed appropriately to capture enough people who are potential users of the idea. And we're asking them on a scale of 0 to 10. 0 to 10, it means we can go to fewer people for statistically significant results. On a scale of 0 to 10, how new and different do you perceive this idea to be? And on a scale of 0 to 10, how much do you like it? Or how likely are you to buy it if you're quoting a price in your concept statement? You get two numbers. You then create a weighted average. You take 60% of purchase intent and add it to 40% of the new and different score. So this gives you one number. You're asking me for a success standard. Well, we've learned that if moving from 6 to 7, you will drastically increase your odds of delivering word of mouth, that wow factor that gets people talking. So around about, you want to be shooting for 7 or above. That said, if you come back with a 5 or a 6, it doesn't mean to say that it's a disaster, scrap the idea. You know where you are in your experimentation. You may well have gathered some qualitative information as part of that survey that bounces you forward. 7, that's what I would shoot for.
Thanks, Helen. That's all the questions we've got time for. We will make sure we answer everyone's and come back to everyone with the answers as well. Phil, over to you.
Thanks, Dougie. Thanks, Helen. Well, just all that remains is to thank Fraser, Dougie, and Helen, and from myself, a big thank you for joining us today. We've had almost 80 people on this call, so we can't get through the incredible number of comments and chats that we've picked up today. However, we'll be certainly following up with you one-to-one, and so the requests for either case studies or indeed examples, or indeed further interest in the training itself that lives behind innovation engineering, we can help you with that in our follow-up conversations with you today. I've dropped twice actually the summary slide into chat, which summarizes the 12 points that Helen shared with you today. I'm about to do that one more time because there's such a lot of feed. You may have lost it in the middle of things. So let me just drop it in right now into chat. If you're looking for it, here it comes. And so thank you very much. We're going to turn many of these topics, no doubt, into another webinar in January. So if you're interested in that, stay tuned. And I think all that remains from us to wish you from wherever you've come in the world, whether it's Cape Town, Dubai, Abu Dhabi, Edinburgh, Aberdeen or London, a big thank you. A safe and happy festive season when it comes. And thank you again for joining us today. Goodbye.